Parents of Reddit, what is most effed up secret you are hiding from your children? My daughter was conceived at work, on airport property, in the back of a refined Ford Focus, while we were waiting for a med flight to land. She knows nothing about this but tells me she wants to be a pilot when she grows up. I'm the child of a parent that hid something horrible until I was 27. One day when my parents has a domestic dispute, my dad called me just to get back at my mom. He said, "Do you want to know something about your whore mother? She slept with over 30 guys during our first 2 years of marriage." I just sat down and started stuttering. He said, "You know how people have always said you look different than the rest of the kids?" I said, "Yeah, that's because I'm not your dad. Your mom slept with my best friend and you were conceived. Another thing, your brother, the one just younger than me, I'm the oldest, belongs to my brother." My mom just bawled in the background without denying it. I just laughed, and then I went into 2 years of therapy. That she can't have a relationship with her grandfather because he's a pedophile and I would never trust him. The rest of my family maintains a relationship with him and leans on me hard to open up communication because family comes first. They are absolutely right. My family does come first, which is why my daughter won't ever have to have a relationship with him. You are doing the right thing. I only found out a couple of years ago that my grandfather was a pedophile and molested most of my aunts and maybe uncles. That also explained why about 90% of my uncles and aunts have been raging alcoholics for their entire lives. He wasn't really my grandfather. He took care of my grandmother when her husband left her and their 6 children. To me, he was my grandfather and he was my godfather. I just don't understand why my otherwise perfectly fine parents had us stay over at my grandmother's place when he was always around. Nothing ever happened as far as I can remember, but I just don't understand why you would take that risk as a parent, no matter how small that risk might be. I have a daughter of my own now, and if that FR would still be alive today, I would not let him anywhere near her. Oh yeah, he was a priest when he took my grandmother in but had to leave the church a few years later. I wonder why. My dad cheated on my mother while she was going through cancer treatments. My mother asked for a divorce. He said, "Go and take the kids." Every Valentine's Day I would receive flowers from my dad and get so happy. My mom would smile and nod and get excited with me. I would call him and thank him. He never sent me flowers. It was my mom all the years. Same thing with birthday cards and Christmas gifts from him. They were never from him. My mom just put his name on them in similar handwriting. Went as far as writing return addresses on mail too. My mom was a superhero of a single parent. It was a secret until recently my mom told me. When she and my dad got divorced, things were very, very messy, and my dad would do shitty things to dodge paying for my care. He ended up owing my mom a couple $1,000s, and my mom was ready to sue, but instead of getting the lawyers involved, and because she knew my dad was not a healthy person to be in my life, she offered him a deal: keep the money, but relinquish custody officially. I'd still get to see him if and when I wanted, but he would give up all legal rights as a guardian, cause he hated paying my mom that much. He took $2,000 over me. Not a life-changing, earth-shattering secret. It's just revealing to know my dad values money more than me. Before anybody casts judgment on my mom, my dad was, and probably is, a piece of human garbage who abused me and allowed me to be abused a few years after this. So I'm 1000% fine with my mom's decision. She's my favorite person in the world and every single day I am so lucky to have her in my life. 3. My father found out when he was in his 40s that his father was not his biological father. His mother, my grandmother, literally cheated on her husband with the milkman. Milkmen were just laying pipe every effing way back when, weren't they? Adoptive parent of 3 kids, 2 of which are biological siblings and cousins. Found out a year after the adoption that the biological parents were half siblings who shared the same dad. The bio parents found out after they had the first child and proceeded to have another. The kids are now 16 and 13 respectively and have zero clue that they are a product of incest. Unfortunately, their biological grandpa just passed away, so there very well could be a big reveal coming in the near future. You probably already know this, but one generation of incest doesn't generally have any negative repercussions unless their dad and both moms all had the same genetic disorders. IMHO. If you tell them, emphasize that even though it's socially weird, they are medically normal and a result of a consensual relationship. No abnormalities physically, due to the incest. They were, however, neglected and malnourished in their early developmental years. This has caused them to be in the lower percentile for physical growth. They are both diagnosed with autism, which primarily affects their ability to form bonds. They are highly intelligent, just socially awkward. That I've been changing every clock in the house on New Year's Eve to 3 hours early. At 9 PM we celebrate the new year, then hang out for an hour. He thinks he's breaking every rule and has a great time. Now that he's turning 11, this will never happen again. With phones and being somewhat smarter, lol. I was the kid in the scenario. When I was like 12, my dad died of leukemia. He was never around much, so I didn't see him often, but that was never the secret. I actually remember the day he took off and left us. Woke up one morning and there was a pile of new toys on the living room floor with a note for mom. Anyway, he started coming around when he received the prognosis. We developed something resembling a positive relationship before he died. When he passed, it absolutely destroyed me. I still remember the funeral. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming out of the car because I didn't want to see it. In his will he left me his car, a Camaro, that I was supposed to get when I turned 16. His parents fought tooth and nail to keep it from me. They were really shy people. His entire side of the family was, and we eventually just told them to F off and keep the damn thing. Fast forward about 15 years, I find out the guy that died was not actually my dad, he was my brother's dad. My real, biological dad has been living in the next town over 20 minutes from my house my entire life. My entire family knew about it, except for me. It was why my grandparents fought to keep the car. They knew I was not his son. I still don't know if he knew or not, but I assume so. My maternal grandmother has met him several times in my life. My mom said she never thought it was anything worth digging up. Said she intended for me to never find out. I've still never spoken to him. I know a name and an approximation of where he lives, as of about 10 years ago. Beyond that, I know jack about the guy. Grandma said if I ever want to meet him, she would help me contact him. Dunno if I ever will. Are you my husband? Was it a 79 Camaro? I am laughing out loud at the idea that this has happened to multiple people. We will call them Camaro kids. Posting here so when my kids are old enough to snoop, they get a split second of excited expectation before they are greeted by my saying I do really enjoy having sex with their mother. Username checks out. Parenting game 10/10. You mother fair. I'm hiding a lot of things. I used to be a stripper for 10 years. Growing up in an abusive house, I partied hard and used to be part of Nick Montreal club scene. That I was kidnapped and taken to another country. There's a lot of things. Now I'm just a boring accountant mom to everyone. No one has any clue what I've been through. Crazy what your kids don't know about you. Honestly, drop the bomb if you see them heading down the same path. They'll sh their pants and it'll get the point across. My mom kept it a secret that the woman I was named after, her mom, my grandma, was stabbed to death by my uncle when my mom was 18. I always suspected my grandma had a tragic death because of how my mom would avoid talking about it, but I didn't know it was that tragic. Is the uncle dead or in prison? What happened with him? I'm the child. I recently found out about the murder-suicide attempt my great-grandmother tried to commit on her family. Her daughter, my grandmother, survived the attack and some years later moved to Canada as a teen and eventually got married and had my dad. Pretty haunting. My son was a product of RE. He just thinks I had really low standards in men at one point. Please God tell me you don't have the shared custody with the father. Nope. He signed over his rights when my son was a toddler, but I allow his mother to be a part of my son's life. She is unaware of the RE as well. The bio dad died late last year and I have debated telling her out of anger of hearing constantly how great of a person he was for the last 14 years and then in death. That we don't go to bed the same time as they do. That's me every night at bedtime. Daughter books. Me no more books. Time for night night. Daughter books. Me no more books. Time for night night. Daughter mama. Me mama went night night. Time for night night. Daughter daddy. Me yes. I'm going night night too. It's 6:45. Of course I'm not going night night. Sounds like she has her priorities in order. After reading a bunch of these, I feel pretty good that my most effed up secret is that I eat most of their Halloween Easter parade candy when they are at school. My parents told me my sister is adopted. They didn't tell her. She's 34. BTW help, what do I do? Buy the whole family DNA test kits for Christmas and watch the world burn. Savage. But actually intrigued on how that will go. There was a Ratafu not too long ago where a teen thought it'd be fun to get an ancestry thing done only to find that his father was actually his uncle and his world got turned on its head. Not sure how it ended, but I think one should be careful. Fires are hard to control. While I agree with people who have said it's not your secret to tell, I believe even more that she deserves to know. I would say you should strongly encourage your parents to tell her and maybe even suggest to them that if they don't you would like to. Then you aren't going behind their back, but it's going to come back to them eventually no matter what, so they need to be responsible and proactive. What was their point in telling you if they wanted it to die a secret? Plot twist. Both children are adopted. They told each child about the other being adopted but not themselves. I'm the child. 48F. But my father told me my mother was dead all throughout my childhood and everyone in the family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, stepmother supported the lie, not because my mother was on drugs or abusive, or a criminal, or even a bad person, just because they had a huge argument one night and she went to stay with a friend, without me, so he decided she would never be allowed to be in my life again, ever. He wrote her off. On my 18th birthday, she called our house and asked to speak with me, so I found out the truth. My son's older half-sister molested him and that's why we don't see them anymore, waiting until we can get into a psych for support before we break it to him. I'm really glad that you stopped all contact and looked to get him professional help. I know people in similar positions, but the family still keep them around or stay in contact. Thanks. He did get professional help when it happened but he was only 3. We think he remembers it but wants us to say it. His school thinks it has a lot to do with current behavior and learning difficulties, so it's time to face it and hopefully put it behind us for good. A colleague of mine has a friend who hid from her 8-year-old daughter that she, the 8-year-old, would die within a few years because of a terminal illness she got. I can see this. My daughter was just born with a rare congenital heart defect. She'll be aware she has it as she grows, but at some point we're going to have to tell her she'll be lucky to live to 40. That conversation is many years away, but it churns my stomach thinking about the burden she'll carry. She'll be lucky to live to 40. I have a condition where the diagnostic and surgical techniques to fix it were incredibly crude 40 years ago and I would have had a 50/50 shot of dying from it. Nowadays, it's incredibly rare that people die from this, so keep your chin up. 40 years is an eternity in medical science. Your daughter's condition might be treatable by the time her heart is overdue. My grandma never told my grandpa that he had Parkinson's and dementia. The last 2 years of his life were pretty bad, but I don't think he ever knew what was happening to him. About 90% of the time he was just gone. But every once in a while there would be a short period where you could tell he was mentally present. He knew something was terribly wrong but didn't know what, and kept asking when his medicine would start working. He didn't know the medicine was just to keep him calm and comfortable. It was a blessing when he finally passed away. I can't imagine being in a situation like that, where you suddenly come to and know something's wrong, but no one will tell you what. Then you drop off again and come back days or weeks later. He was a terrible human being, but I don't think even he deserved that. As a person who has worked pretty extensively in nursing homes, please tell your loved ones if they have dementia. If you don't, they will refuse help, refuse care, and suffer without understanding why. Usually they do remember that they are sick if they were told that they were, and will be more accepting of strangers giving them medicine, trying to bathe them, telling them they have to sleep there, etc. My wife and I each have a child from a previous marriage. Both of our ex-spouses were abusive cheaters. Both children still adore and idolize their other parent and we just keep smiling and nodding. This probably isn't the type of thing OP was asking, but it is a secret that we will maintain for years. I feel like that's probably best until your kids are older. My mom did not hide that fact at all and rubbed it in my face, used it against me, and made me really hate part of who I was for a long time. Kids don't understand that it doesn't have to do with them, so good for you for letting them be kids for now. I'm working out how to explain that the chicken we eat is the same as the kind of chickens that live on a farm. This is my parents' favorite story to tell. Apparently I lost it in a McDonald's while eating chicken nuggets and then choked out. Then what does bread come from? In between sobs. Then what does bread come from? Crushed dreams. Before I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I took a ton of pills. I think it's the closest I've ever come to suicide. I had always dealt with anxiety and depression. I feel like the extra hormones put me over the edge. I found out about a week later that I was pregnant. Surprise. I was terrified the entire pregnancy that something would be wrong with him. Luckily, he was completely healthy and is an incredibly smart child. I've never told anyone. I feel so guilty. My sister didn't realize she was pregnant until she was about 3 months along. She was 21. So of course she had been drinking heavily the whole time. She said she couldn't figure out why she'd start throwing up after only a couple drinks, but she'd always go back and keep drinking. I guess her body succeeded in keeping the little guy safe because he's 6 and other than being a spoiled brat, there's nothing wrong with him. My whole family thinks I'm awful with money because I'm super broke despite having a good job, but I'm actually socking away every spare penny to put my niece through college and to take care of my parents when they can't work anymore. My wife is not the biological mother of our twins. We did IVF and their biological mother was an egg donor from a country in South America. My wife carried them and gave birth to them, but has no biological connection. We'll tell them someday when they're older. It's a little bit strange, but one looks exactly like me at that age, and the other one looks very much